My people were biologically determined for one purpose alone, to sense the coming of damn fine podcasts. I sense it coming now.
Hello and welcome to a Discovery Home Companion. Again, your home for all your Star Trek Discovery companions. No, I gotta figure out a better tagline there. Anyways, my name is Wade Bowen, and with me today are a couple of the regular guys you might have heard on this season of Disco Home. We have Glenn Hall.
Hello.
And Sean Parada.
Hello.
Two guys that don't know quite as much about Star Trek. Glenn maybe more than Sean, and Sean less than all of us.
Yeah, less than probably the average even human who's seen an episode of Enterprise or TNG or something.
All right. Yeah, and then we're talking about the most recent episode, but I should also introduce, we have another special guest this episode. Between Sean and Glenn, who don't know a whole lot about Star Trek, I've got another, I'd call him an expert. I think that's safe to say. Gonna have on here is Ryan Britt.
What's up?
He's a entertainment journalist. You might have read some of his articles. He's an entertainment editor at fatherly.com, and he also writes Star Trek articles for Sci-Fi Wire and Den of Geek.
I love Star Trek.
Our man on the inside here.
I love Star Trek so hard.
Right, so we're here to talk about what is the name of this most recent episode that just came out?
Saru is hot.
Saru is fish zaddy. That's what this episode's called.
Off.
He does, and I am into that weird fish body.
Well, that is Doug Jones's brand.
Yeah.
I asked Doug Jones if we were going to find out what Saru's sex life was like in this season. And he said he could not tell. But that he himself also wants to know.
Okay, all right. I want to know how those back of the neck tentacles are
The
involved.
ganglia.
That's what I want to know. What do those do?
He's the only one of his kind. Can he mate with non-Kelpians? Anyway, he doesn't know and he wants to find out.
All right, good. He and I have that in common.
The people want to know.
The episode's called like an Opal for Sharon. Is that what it's called?
For Sharon.
It's gonna give her a necklace. An Obol for Charon.
There it is.
Charon.
Oh, Charon. Yeah. An obol for Charon.
The moon of Pluto.
Oh, is that what
Oh,
that
right.
is?
Well, the fairy. I think it was what I assumed it was like he's the ferryman of the dead in Dante's Inferno, and in Greek.
In Greek mythology.
In Greek mythology, you'd put coins on your deceased's eyes to pay the toll. And so I assume an obol is a form of currency?
Yeah, the price of death.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I don't know. It's a good pretentious Star Trek title.
Yeah. The good old.
It seemed right.
Yeah, good Star Trek pretentious tomfoolery with the titles, which that's fine.
All right,
that's what I'm here for.
Exactly.
Obscure literary references.
Yeah. And I guess this one does have a theme of death to it.
Yeah, boy, death is all over this fucking episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got certain strong opinions.
I do too.
Okay, yeah, just quick for the people that don't know Star Trek, so I'm going to defer to you. What did you think about this episode?
I fucking dug it.
I liked it. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, no, I liked this episode very much. It was my favorite one since the first one. It felt Star Trek-y. I felt like, and I mean, again, I say that having no idea what I'm talking about. The last episode felt less Star Trek-y. It felt like it was so much in service of the greater arc and less like a self-contained story. And this one felt more self-contained and had some really obvious themes that I enjoyed and had a lot of character stuff with characters we don't spend as much time with in other episodes. And I still hate the spore drive, and I still think I hate everything that went on in that room.
Oh, really? Okay.
That wasn't Tig Notaro and Anthony Rapp singing David Bowie that I was here for.
I was just glad when they were singing. I was like, well, it's just thank God they're not singing Rent.
Yeah, I know.
I was scared. I was scared.
Yeah.
Didn't the cast just do a Rent parody thing that they released?
I couldn't get through it. I love the cast. They're wonderful. Just having interviewed tons of them, I really love them, but that Rent parody was rough.
It was rough. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's like what was the La Boheme thing that Wade you told us about from last season? It's like, come on, it's just too on the nose.
I don't know. I'm on board for little winks to the fact that Anthony Rapp is a Broadway star.
Well,
look, I'm fine with him.
Fun.
All of them are. I mean, Mary Chieffo and Mary Wiseman. Mary Chieffo, who plays Laurel, and Mary Wiseman went to Juilliard together.
Oh,
you know,
cool.
so I talked to
That's cool.
I talked to Chieffo 2 weeks ago before the Klingon episode, and I was like, "Are you going to get to sing?" Because there's Klingon opera, and she's like, "No, but someday." So the David Bowie scene was really cute. I actually really liked it.
It was
that scene.
cute.
I thought it was
liked
great.
it.
I liked it in principle. I thought the choice of song was, again, way too on the nose. Like
I was cool with it. I liked it. It was over the head with space stuff. It's funny.
Right. If you're going to be on the nose, go with Bowie. That's fine.
Yeah,
So
just
I can appreciate that rationale.
It is a funny conversation because you can almost count on one hand pop music in Star Trek.
Yeah,
that did feel a little odd that they were talking about kind of relatively contemporary for us, like pop culture references.
Because it's like
Sabotage?
what is it? Like Sabotage, but that's the reboot.
Yeah.
Right? And in 2 movies, Sabotage.
Right.
But I think the most famous one I think is Magic Carpet Ride in Star Trek First Contact.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't even the Steppenwolf version in the movie.
That's funny.
But when you bought the CD, it was the Steppenwolf version.
Huh.
Oh,
Anyway,
interesting.
And that film was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who's very involved in Discovery. But I can't think of like other times. I mean, the punk rock song in Star Trek 4 is invented for that film.
Right.
It doesn't exist. I can't. And then I guess there's a bunch of shit on Deep Space Nine, right? All the crooner stuff.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing the crooner are the more not classical, but I guess the more.
Glenn, have you seen those episodes
of Deep Space Nine?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I just meant sorry. Sorry. I should clarify what I was saying.
Talking out of turn.
I was like, I didn't think you don't know what you're talking about there.
No. Well, I guess what I was trying to say is, it just on a vibe level, the idea of like crooner and like lounge music, that kind of thing feels more at home in the world of Star Trek than like truly contemporary music. Again, like anything from the rock and roll, the start of rock and roll forward. Like that feels.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, it's going back to Void. Like Star Trek is obsessed with doing all their references are 20th century. And TNG, usually they were TNG public domain references with,
right.
And then last season on Discovery, they had, what was that in the party scene?
I don't remember. I thought there was a remix of Staying Alive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like the Fugees version or something.
Yeah, which I like.
That's very funny.
I know what Glenn means, though. There's a difference between Captain Sisko singing "The Best Is Yet to Come" and Tilly singing and Stamets singing Space Oddity. There is something different about that.
Right.
I like both, to be clear. And I love Tilly, and I think that Tilly's my favorite character on the show, which is also what I did not like about this episode is I did not like Tilly being victimized. I thought that was boring. And I think that the Spore, I don't know, Wade, you could back me up here. The Spore reminds me too much of Isabella from the Star Trek Next Generation episode Imaginary Friend. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
There's okay, it's just so you guys imagine like one of the little girls from The Shining starts appearing to a child on the Enterprise, and then they find out she's really like just an alien who needs a friend.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, so very similar to
May in this. So I kind of don't like the May storyline, and that was I agree with you guys. I thought this episode was awesome. I thought it rocked. It felt really Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
I didn't like that there were, like, my wife was like, wait a minute, there are 2 aliens in this episode, and they don't have anything to do with each other. The sphere has nothing to do with the Spore alien that is May. On paper, I like both of those conflicts, but I don't like them in the same episode, and I don't like Tilly being like, Tilly's better when she's in her bathrobe, like telling everybody how to fix the ship. Or when she's pretending.
I didn't like that as much, but I'm a weirdo.
I'm gonna say I like it when she's being like a scrappy person, or like in the first season where she has to pretend to be her evil self, and
that was funny.
And she's saying, let's not keep these assholes waiting and stuff like that. I like it when she's doing that and she's being Wesley Crusher basically. I like that.
I'm kind of over her being the best. I want her to be good at what she does, but like everybody's superlative about everything. Like she's she's the youngest ever, and she's like just make her part of the program, but whatever.
Not everyone needs to be the chosen one.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of music, though, and then Tig also referenced having a dream about playing drums for Prince.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then someone referenced, I can't remember if it was this week or last, someone referenced John Lennon, or maybe that might have been in a first season episode, because I'm starting to watch that.
God damn it, Glenn.
There's a John Lennon reference? I don't remember that.
This episode, I mean, I've been mixed on Discovery and everything. For me, this was my favorite episode of the series so far. It felt like,
Okay.
For me, it was like, I can say this is a good episode without any caveats.
Yeah.
Though y'all's caveats are making sense to me now that you're talking about it. But for me, as someone coming in that hated a lot of the first season, like I was pretty hot on the first season in some aspects, but this one I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm here for pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I think that my frustration was that it felt like a really good Star Trek episode, and it felt like a good episode of Discovery. I just wish that there was 4 plot lines.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a lot, and it was kind of like the previous episode where I was sort of like, this is a lot for one episode. And I wonder, like, I don't want to be too boring with talking about old Star Trek, but like, that episode I just referenced, Imaginary Friend of the Next Generation, like that was pretty much the only thing that happened in that episode of the Next Generation.
Right.
There was like a creepy little girl, and she's an alien, and like, sometimes I wonder, and maybe this is something that happens in contemporary television in general, but it almost reminded me of like The Sopranos, where you'd like watch those later era episodes of The Sopranos, and there would be like 6 things happening in one episode.
Yeah.
You're like, here's 5 minutes of what Carmela is doing. Here, what is Christopher messed up this week?
Yeah.
It kind of felt like that, where I'm just like, could they have just done the episode about Saru almost dying, or could they have just done the episode about because the spore thing is obviously there to undo the spore drive. Like after this, we're not going to have the spore drive. Clearly,
right. They have to explain why in new Star Trek they don't use the spore drive. So like, this is
and
it.
Presumably they're also going to unbury Wilson Cruz.
Right. So you have to rescue Wilson Cruz from the network, and then you have to close the network forever, presumably.
Right.
And I have not seen the next episode, so I can speak about that without getting in trouble.
Okay.
But like, it seems like, and that's a very Star Trek way to do it, right? Like, we can't do this because it's hurting this innocent alien life form.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was like, doesn't that deserve to be? Maybe it will be next week. I just felt like it deserved to be its own episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It feels like I was saying to Wade at the beginning, I feel like that the only flaw that I saw with this episode was that I still feel like we're dealing with all the stuff the showrunners were doing that got fired, Gretchen J. Berg and Aaron Harberts. We're still dealing with all their stuff. And then Alex Kurtzman, the current showrunner, whatever they need to set up for the back end of the season, they're still like jamming into these like rewrites of these episodes or whatever. Yeah. That's my opinion. I could be wrong about that. But just like, that's what I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, they need all this Spock shit to be in the background, and they need to like set up this spore drive thing. So they had to jam it into these other episodes up top. But everything with Saru and the Sphere was great. I love it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And there, I mean, it really was, there was a moment that I felt like was a perfect encapsulation of, Discovery is a show that seems to kind of invite you to be ambivalent about it. Like it can be almost like surgically uneven sometimes. But this episode, there was a moment where I think it was right before the Sphere was about to die, and it was like they were downloading all of its knowledge, or they were debating whether to do it. And Captain Pike was like, whoa, but we gotta get to Spock. We only have 5 minutes to get to Spock. And to me, it was almost like they were just communicating the issue with this current arc, where it's like, something interesting is happening right here and now that we, the audience, are absolutely on board for.
Right.
And yet, someone is like, no, we have to go away from this and go to Spock. Like, Spock keeps intruding on it, particularly when he's not even on screen, he's not even like a part of the story. It feels kind of like the show is at odds with itself. But that being said, I really liked this episode. Like, it was honestly almost every moment of it I was on board for.
Well, and I mean, this is like this, jumping to the end, obviously, but even like on that point, like it even annoyed me that Michael comes in at the end and like Deus Ex Machinas, like we have Spock's location still. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You just don't. Just like let's just spend 2 episodes not talking about Spock.
Yeah.
Like this episode starts again with a geographical update on Spock. Like I don't need it. I don't want it.
Nope.
Glenn, I think that's such a brilliant way of putting it, though. Like that's such a brilliant way of observing like the show's tension between the fan service of needing Spock and you're right. Like why not just give up? They should have made the sacrifice and not gotten it about Spock.
Yeah.
Sean's right.
It's like the show doesn't trust us to not want to watch it without that, dangling Spock to, keep us engaged.
Speaking of fan, maybe Ryan, you might have been more keyed in on this, or maybe it's just me. When they said the thing was organic and inorganic components, my brain was like, "Oh shit! Don't make this a Borg origin."
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I don't know. I mean, deviating slightly from that, I think that what was interesting for me with you guys mentioned like the number one beams aboard and passes Pike a note in class, like here's Spock.
Yeah.
Right. Like I thought that was like annoying to me. But what was awesome about that to me was one little line that I want to talk about just really quickly that I thought was the other reason why the episode was brilliant, which Pike says, let's rip out all the holograms on the Enterprise.
And use the screens.
And I wrote about this for Sci-Fi Wire, but like, give me just a second about this. Is what's awesome about that is obviously it cheaply explains why the 60s Enterprise looks like the 60s Enterprise. It's low tech on purpose. But for you guys who don't know a ton about Star Trek, what's awesome about that is that it actually works because this episode also demonstrated that Discovery was too reliant on voice commands. Michael Burnham cannot use the turbo lift without Saru because it runs on voice commands.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But in the original Star Trek, they don't use voice commands to run the elevators.
Oh, they have to hold the handle.
They have to hold the handles.
Yeah.
So I think that this episode to me was this kind of sly social commentary. And in the original series, we know that Captain Pike will become fleet captain. So he'll have a lot of influence. So I'm like, Pike is Marie Kondo. He is saying, if there are too many technological bells and whistles on this shit, on these Starfleet ships, I want the tech walked back. I want it to be push button. And that is evident in the original series. And I thought this episode's other message was that Discovery was too reliant on technology. Saru says nobody's bothered to learn a foreign language, implying that half the crew is relying on like an audio version of spell check.
Yeah.
Right. To like even talk to each other.
Oh, and that explains Uhura.
Right. And so that explains why, like, so then you're like, okay, so in the original series and later, they're presumably in deep space and they actually would need a ship. The joke I made on my article on Sci-Fi Wire is like, imagine if your car ran on Alexa and then suddenly you didn't have Wi-Fi service. That's what happened to Discovery in this episode at the beginning of the episode, where they all started speaking foreign languages. Like, Discovery has too much technology. And so I thought this episode was saying, with the hologram thing, with the universal translator thing, they were saying, this is what happens when you have too much technology. And these ships actually need to be walked back. It kind of like, you guys like Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, love it.
It's kind of like when Adama makes everybody use phones in Battlestar Galactica, right? Like phones with cords.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's like, well, the Cylons can hack our shit, so we have to fucking have... I felt like this is that was the version of this that Star Trek was doing. They were saying, and Pike's sitting there going, yeah, I wanted the holograms ripped out, and now I want everybody to learn how to fucking speak a foreign language, and I want to use push-button controls, because these flat screen things don't work. And then 10 years later, you can be like, oh, the original Star Trek has push-button controls, and the elevators run on a handle, and Pike was right. So I love that. And to me, that was like, it was subtle, but I'm like, all the writers in the writers' room of Discovery are huge Star Trek nerds, so they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. And this one felt like they knew what they were, like, for me, going through Discovery, I haven't felt that confidence in like knowing. They feel like think they know what they're doing, and I kept seeing all these holes that drove me crazy. But this one really kind of worked for me.
Well, supposedly the core staff, are all huge Star Trek nerds,
right?
And then supposedly part of the reason why Berg and Harberts were fired were because of that problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? And even when the 2 times I interviewed Berg and Harberts, which I have to say were very easy people to interview, they were really cagey about Star Trek shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were like, like, I remember when the Mirror Universe episode happened. Sorry if you guys don't want to talk about the Mirror Universe.
No, it's okay.
No, please.
But when the Mirror Universe episode happened, Gretchen Berg is on the phone with me being like, the writer's room gave me a headache of trying to explain to me how, and so like they hated all the canon stuff that they had to deal with.
Right.
That checks out.
So it kind of makes sense now that you've got, and Kurtzman, of course, had to deal with all this shit 10 years ago when he wrote the reboot movies, with Bob Orsi and J.J. Abrams. But he's like, okay, he's probably like, I gotta let this nerdy writer's room.
Yeah.
And historically, what's funny about that is that that's been a problem going back to the 80s. Because like when Ronald Moore got hired on Next Generation, he was told not to fly his freak flag, right? Like he was told not to reveal that he was a huge Star Trek fan because Rick Berman and the guys who ran The Next Generation would be annoyed. So I think something similar happened in the first season of Discovery, and I think that it's over now. And I think now they're just like letting the writer's room just be really like nerdy and just like incorporate all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Yeah. And I didn't like the Spock stuff so much, but I thought Rebecca Romijn as number one was great, like her and Pike's dynamic.
Yeah, she was good, but like, she's going to be in like more episodes this season, right? That wasn't just like a cameo.
She's got to be. I mean, she's got to be. I mean, she's a huge actress. I can't imagine they would just.
Right.
I mean, the Enterprise has to come back. I think it's the big question for me is like, are they going to really? There's two ways that it can go down. There's two ways that the season can end. Pike and Spock go back to serving on the Enterprise, or Pike goes on to become an admiral and Spock goes back to the Enterprise. It's like Spock served with Pike for 13 years in the original series, and at this point, we don't know where we're at with that.
Right.
We could either be at like 7 years or we could be at 12 years.
Right.
So like this could be the extra year that we're seeing, or this could be a random year in between them doing, or I think it's 11 years they served together.
Yeah.
So that's like 2 5-year missions on the Enterprise plus a year. So like my theory is that this year of Discovery accounts for that extra year and months that Spock talks about in the original series. But like, yeah, the Enterprise has to come back, and we have to see the inside of it.
Yeah.
If we don't see the inside of the Enterprise this season, I'm going to be really like...
Right. We saw Spock's room in the first episode, right? And that was it.
I mean, and now that they had Pike saying we're going to like rip out the holograms and like make everything retro, they can have the Enterprise look however the hell they want and not piss anybody off who's like obsessed with like 60s, all those guys who made those fan films, who are like...
right.
All those Axanar guys, like, oh, what? It should look... it's like, whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
It's fine. They change the uniforms every like 5. If you like are a hardcore Star Trek fan, they change the uniforms like every like 15 years or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
It does seem like the uniforms change a lot over the course of the saga.
Right. Well, because the nerds will be like, oh, upset about how they're different from the original, but then people just want to redesign shit for a new TV show. It's like it's okay, everybody.
Do you guys know the craziest fan theory of why the uniforms are different all the time on Star Trek?
No.
What?
The craziest fan theory that I'm aware of is that the reason why Starfleet changes the uniform so often is because time travel is so fucking common. And that Section 31, right, like the secret organization that is on Discovery now, secretly advises and makes Starfleet change the uniform so that way if somebody randomly pops up, they'll be like, you're from 2250. I can tell by your blue jumpsuit. Motherfucker, I got you.
That's so funny.
But I mean, I think it's very dumb, but it's very funny.
I almost want that to be the case because I think that's really...
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, I would love it if there was like a silly reason for something like that.
That's the silly reason that's the only one that... It's the only one that also, like, if I was like 12, I would be like, yep, I buy it.
Yeah, that's like, that makes sense.
But Rebecca Romijn's got to come back, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you. It's like and that's what I was thinking. It's like she's a big actress. It's like surely this wouldn't have been for just a 10-minute role in one episode.
Well, I get the sense sometimes that we're seeing like again maybe these scripts out of order than they were originally written. Because like even like New Eden, right? Like it's weird. Like you don't see Tig or Non, the other character from the Enterprise.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, totally missing.
Yeah.
Who I also like. Why, like, is it just me or like all of Pike's crew like way more likable than half the Discovery crew?
Yeah,
like,
for the most, yeah. Like,
yeah, we talked a lot about the guy who gets wrecked on episode 1. Like, that guy did not get a fair shake. We might have liked him. Yep. But he showed up and everybody's like, eat shit. And he was like, what? And then he died and we were like, yeah! Everyone's like, no, I don't think this was fair, but okay.
I mean, I loved it just because it fulfilled the original series. Kirk is like, all right, Bones, Spock, and Spinelli. It fulfilled that for me, where it was like, Pike's like Burnham, Non, and Connolly. You're like, okay, you're like this guy.
Yeah. What's the joke from Galaxy Quest with Sam Rockwell? It's like, what's my last name? Do you know my last name?
Right, exactly. I don't know. I feel like that was the kind of thing where like my dad's not alive, but he's a big Star Trek fan. I feel like that was the kind of scene where Connolly bought it that my dad would have loved. He would be like, yes, that's right, that guy has to die. But I like Non. I like that she's back. I think that Tig is great. I like that she's back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the sense that like that some of these scripts feel like they were written slightly out of order, where you're like, maybe number one, that scene seemed like it was part of a different script. That's all I'm saying. The number one scene seemed like they felt like they chopped that and they put it at the top of this episode.
Oh yeah,
because they were like, we got to keep the Spock thing going.
I can buy that.
You know?
Yeah, there was that first 7 minutes was like, oh, we're dealing with Spock stuff. Like that could have been totally gone from this episode, and you wouldn't have lost anything except 7 minutes of your runtime.
What's also weird right now is we're at a point where, other than the Spock footage from the trailers and the footage with Giorgio coming on the Discovery and being like, yo, I'm work for Section 31 and I'm an asshole. Like, other than that, we've seen everything from the trailers at this point.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of weird because...
That's neat.
It is neat, and it's weird because you're like, there's like 9 more episodes. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. They really blew all their money, and what are we going to get now?
Well, but think about it in Season 1. Sorry, guys, for the non-Season 1 people. In Season 1, they hid the entire Mirror Universe thing, which means they had all those sets, all those costumes, they just completely hid from all the trailers. Like, that wasn't in any of the trailers.
Right.
But I love that kind of thing. I think more shows and movies should really aim for that, to like be able to, you know, if you're a movie, like you should not put anything from your third act in the trailer and so on and so forth.
But I guess that's what I'm saying, is that it's possible at this point that and it's also like I like have my little like press antenna up. Like last week at this time, I had already seen episode 4. CBS just sent it out. This time I haven't, and that usually means 2 things. One, it means that the special effects aren't done, and so they haven't sent the screener out.
Right. Yeah.
And that means you're dealing with a heavy special effect episode. Then that's true for all these TV shows. It was true when I was getting screeners of The Expanse or Doctor Who or whatever, right? The second reason that they do that is because it's a big episode. And I can't prove that, and CBS publicity would probably be like, no, that's not true. It was just because of production reasons, and I would have to take them at their word. But speaking from experience, it usually means, like, and there's not really they're not really doing episodic trailers this season anymore. They're just kind of doing this season on Discovery.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, I feel like that they're hiding something really big, and I think that it's going to happen next week and the following week.
Okay.
That's because it feels like you got a 14 episode season. You've set all this like random stuff up. I feel like that's something big. It's either going to be Spock or something just out of the blue. You know, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Because I also didn't see the weird Klingon episode coming at all. I was like, wow, well, that was fucking crazy. But so yeah, that's my theory, is that next week is like number 1, the Enterprise, Spock, or something we just haven't. I also have a really crazy fan theory that Scotty is secretly going to be on this season.
Oh, really?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
All right.
My secret prediction for next episode is just that's when they're bringing Wilson Cruz back, because
I think that makes sense to me too.
Because they're going to the Mushroom Kingdom or whatever, and so
they're going to the mushroom. Well, they have to get Tilly out of that cocoon, right?
Right, and she's somehow in the mycelial network. It looks like.
Now,
so.
How did you guys interpret that scene? They cut her out of the cocoon, and then she's back in the cocoon. But they also were hallucinating at one point,
Right.
So how did you guys interpret that? Did they hallucinate cutting her out of the cocoon?
I don't think so. I think they cut her out, which released a lot of spores, which got them all high, and in the chaos of like them, whatever shot they gave themselves to not be high, May, or whatever that entity is going to end up being called, beckoned Tilly back into the cocoon, and in doing so transported her to the mycelium network.
Cronenberg Horta is what I wrote down in my notes.
It was like very like body horror for a little bit there.
Yeah, I dug that stuff.
Yeah, the Horta is a original series reference that Ryan got.
Well, the Horta thing was funny too, because I liked that scene where Tig and Anthony Rapp fight about dilithium. So like dilithium is like that was like, but like in Star Trek, like in the original series, the Horta was this, they were mining for pergium when they fought the Horta in The Devil in the Dark, the original series episode, which is not dilithium, but it's heavily implied to be part of the dilithium process, right? And then in the original series episode Mirror Mirror, the introduction of the Mirror Universe, the Enterprise is trying to get dilithium crystals from these like really peaceful dudes. And then in the Mirror Universe Enterprise is just like, screw you, we're just going to take them. So like them having an argument about wars being fought over dilithium was pretty dope. But also like they're just going to have to keep using it because
right.
But yeah, I don't know. I really liked May in episode 2. May was introduced,
right, and then she flips her character.
Yeah.
Goes from like nice imaginary friend to like evil ghost.
I guess my thing is that like I really like the idea that when she goes, "You are the alien invader" in this episode. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I loved that. I love the anytime. And Star Trek's done a lot of good episodes this season that are like not about war and fighting, and more like about rescues. Like, so the action is more oriented towards rescuing somebody or helping somebody. And even the Klingon episode was like they were like fighting for their baby. Like, it wasn't like they were fighting to fight. You know, so I like that because Star Trek's a very peace, or should be, I think, a very peace-oriented show. It's not Game of Thrones, you know, but I liked May when it was more of a mystery, and now I'm just like, so it's just some memory that Tilly had, and this fungus was like, that's a good memory.
Yeah,
I don't know. I liked when May was more mysterious, I guess. And I like this. I like the spore alien being mad at Stamets. I think that's cool, but there's something about it that just feels slightly off to me.
I think that's something that goes back to the complaints about like all the plot lines that they shove into an episode. Like, things happen fast in this show. Like, things do not, like, I don't know. I'm probably the only one here who watches Empire.
No, you're
but
not.
Like, on Empire, things happen immediately. You know, like a plot line that would take 4 episodes on another show is wrapped up in 20 minutes. And it feels like that's happening like on this show a little bit. Like, it feels like her having this thing and the May mystery, and like another show she would spend more time with May and like talk it out and figure out who this is and think they're okay, and then be revealed to be evil. And the next episode, like, not really evil, but like, you know, the victim of a genocide that Anthony Rapp is inadvertently, you know, like perpetuating. Like, and that would happen over like, you know, 6 episodes while other stuff's going on in the show. And here, like, I mean, effectively, like, over the course of 2 full episodes, that's all been revealed, and we know all of that, and it feels a little bit rushed to me sometimes.
That's definitely seems to be a common thread, at least in this season, where there's just too many cooks in the kitchen plot-wise.
If they keep a guest alien for 3 or 4 episodes, that might be a record for them, though. You know, like...
Yeah. I mean,
the tardigrade lasted 2 episodes. I thought that was going to be like a half a season arc or something. But...
That's so interesting. Yeah, like I said, I think that I couldn't think of any other Star Trek episode where there were, again, 2 aliens.
Yeah.
And outside of the normal aliens that are just their friends that work on the ship.
Right. The guest alien is I feel like is a good term.
Like it felt honestly like, I don't know if you guys watched the most recent season of Doctor Who.
I have not.
It felt a little like that. Like, there's the season finale of Doctor Who is like every single episode of Discovery right now, where like the Doctor's like, well, we're gonna add this alien with this alien, and we're gonna fix everything. You know, it's just like it felt very much. And I love Doctor Who. Don't get me wrong, but like the Deus Ex Machina. Somebody said a Deus Ex Machina. Like, there's a Deus Ex Machina quality to this episode with everything that happens in it, that like it's like Saru's gonna live, you know, like they're like
right. Yeah, we talked about Saru dying, I guess, but
Saru fake dying.
Yeah, it had me wondering if they were gonna kill him, because I knew that, because like my meta brain was like meta thinking. It was like, well, I know that he got work for like, you know, What We Do in the Shadows or whatever. Wait a minute.
Right.
Was he trying to make an exit?
Oh, is he going to be on that?
Yeah, I think he's got something on that. But it's like, wait, did he get cast? And are they hemorrhaging money? Did Doug Jones want to leave? Of course, it turns out that's not what happened. But
he still could leave.
Yeah.
You know, like I had the same.
Right, because now he's like, I have to go back.
Yep. So like shit's been revealed, man. I got to go tell my people.
Did you guys see the little short that sets all this up? Like the 50.
I did. Yeah.
Well, I have not seen it, but I listened to the podcast where Wade talked about it, so I kind of have.
I liked it a lot, honestly. But now in retrospect, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I feel like they wrote it to set this up.
Totally.
And I don't know. And like now I'm like thinking, I had the same thought you did, Wade. Like my meta brain was like, Doug Jones is really famous now.
Yeah.
Like he wanted the Shape of Water like made him huge. Like this is, and now they're like, you could conceivably replace Saru with Spock. And go into season 3 with Spock on the Discovery. All you have to do is get Spock back on the Enterprise 7 years later.
Yeah.
Like you could conceivably, and Spock says that he served with Captain Pike for 11 years. He didn't say he served on the Enterprise for 11 years. So like, and Kurtzman and these people, they know that.
Right.
They're like, we have wiggle room here, you know? So I feel like that Doug Jones could leave.
Yeah.
He still could.
I was sweating it here, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like him so much. I hope he doesn't.
I really hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
I think he's great. I hope that Saru becomes the captain of the Discovery after Pike retires.
Yeah, Saru's a breath of fresh air the show needs sometimes.
He's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, I hope that he doesn't leave.
I mean, everybody did get really worked up when Anson Mount tweeted that he was out of a job. So that's what started the, oh my God, the Discovery got canceled rumors, which are a little hyperbolic.
When did he tweet that?
A week or two ago.
Yeah.
Like him and Ethan Peck said, oh, we're out of a job. Hey, anybody got any work? We'll act for food or whatever. So like they were done shooting for the season, presumably.
Yeah, I don't know. I talked to Anson Mount right before the premiere. And I have to say that dude, like, he's definitely knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
He's definitely like, first of all, like really cool guy, and like definitely like chilled out. I definitely got him at like the end of his press tour.
Oh yeah.
he was like pretty tired, you could tell, but I got the sense from him that he just knows that there's a lot more that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And what he said to me then, and he's repeated this in more recent interviews, is just that everything that you're seeing is Act 2 of Pike's story, because Act 1 is in the cage, and then Act 3 is in the menagerie when he's, a vegetable in a space wheelchair.
Right.
Right. So I don't know. I don't think Anson Mount will be in season 3 of Star Trek Discovery.
I don't either.
I really doubt it.
I do really like him on the show, though.
I love him.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Brightest Star short trek, you're right, it did feel like it was leading up. It's like, that's what I didn't like about it. It felt like all exposition with no complications.
That's what you didn't like about Brightest Star, Wade?
Yeah.
I guess I just liked it because I was surprised that it connected Giorgio specifically to him. Mm-hmm. So, like, I liked that. I didn't expect to... Anytime Star Trek can surprise me at all, I'm always happy. So, before we started recording, I was, like, talking about how, like, many people, myself included, called the Mirror Universe in the first season.
Right.
And Tyler being a Klingon as well.
Oh yeah, I called that on. I mean, I wasn't writing about it, so CBS didn't contact me. But for our prediction podcast, before anything started shooting, we're like, well, there's going to be a secret Klingon.
Yeah. Well,
and I even said they're going to probably. The thing I don't want them to do, but I'm afraid they're going to do, is kill Anthony Rapp's boyfriend. And they did.
Right, and then all of it happened.
Yeah.
Right, like that's the thing, is that like, and I think that was, what I will say about this season of Discovery is I actually don't know. I actually am not confident. Like, I'm like, they could have Saru leave. Mm-hmm. They could actually fuck with canon a little bit and have Captain Pike get into his paralyzing accident this season. They could foreshadow that with a flash forward to the future. But I actually am not confident in any of those predictions.
Yeah.
Like, whereas with season 1 of Discovery, I was like, they're definitely going to the Mirror Universe. That guy's definitely a Klingon. He was on a fucking Klingon prison ship and he came out of nowhere.
Right. And the original Klingon is nowhere to be found. Yeah, that guy's a fucking
This guy's a Klingon. And then you walk back like the casting announcement from earlier in 2016 that he was cast as a Klingon.
Right. Oh, and the guy that they named that said is the actor behind Vok, it just happens to be like his actual childhood name or whatever.
And Shazad Latif played Jekyll and Hyde on Penny Dreadful. It just, so I mean...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
He actually said that was why he thinks he got cast.
That's funny.
Interesting.
It wasn't for Clem Fandango, huh?
Yeah, I did a phone call with him. He's British, which is weird. When he and obviously Jason Isaacs both are, which is very weird because thinking of them as those characters and talking to them on the phone is like very different. But he was like, it was after the episode where there's 3 versions of him in the episode. Because it's like there's a mirror Voke. And, So he. Oh. Yeah. So anyway, they definitely. But this season I have no idea. I actually don't know. So like, if they can surprise me, like I thought Saru was going to die in this episode. Wade, like I was like, he's going to die. So
I was more skeptical that he was going to.
I shed a tear. One lone tear.
I thought that they're not going to kill him, and then the episode was good enough. They're like, wait, they might fucking kill him.
Well, and then you think about all the times that Star Trek's done that before, where it like came out of nowhere, and like you're like, oh, like Dax died in season 6 of DS9, or like season 1 of TNG, Yar dies. It's like that they've done it.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, it might not work story wise, but I don't know what the contract disputes are like. Maybe
There's also an interview, and I could be wrong about this, but there's also an interview from Kurtzman floating around out there where he says something about a funeral in this season, and I could be wrong about this, but I swear to God, I read him say something about or maybe it was from the composer, from Jeff Russo. But there was something, and that could be anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it could be the most minor character, and it's the classic thing of like, oh, who's this for? And it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of a cop out. But
yeah, I mean, it could be anything. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the strangest thing about science fiction in general, I find, because what you guys were saying, like how they have to like keep the Spock shit going, and they have to do all these familiar things to make people happy or interested. It means sort of that I actually like don't know what they're going to do with any of it.
Right.
Yeah.
They're bucking some conventions because of like the story they're sort of stuck telling.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I would almost love them not find Spock and just keep doing cool sci-fi stories.
Yeah, that's ideally.
Me too.
You know.
Yeah, it's just like, again, they need to trust that we're gonna like the show for what it is without the dangling stick. I feel like I've brought up Gotham several times in the episodes I've been on, but like I keep thinking of it in comparison because it's a similar dynamic where like a show that should have trusted its audience to appreciate the story of Jim Gordon by itself just cannot stop ham-fistedly throwing in Batman.
Isn't that kid like in the Bat costume this season?
That's what I've heard. So I told the guys,
that's insane.
I've told the guys a couple episodes ago, I tried watching Gotham once. I could not get past the recap.
Yeah,
that show seems like a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching it I remember I had to write about it for some defunct website for the first season. I remember just being like, "What the fuck are they doing?" And then like I keep hearing about it because it films in like Brooklyn, I think, Wade.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I feel like I've seen a lot of like.
I was working in Dumbo, I think, at the time, and I was just like in that part of Brooklyn, and I was just like, okay, so this show is still on. So that's a really good comparison, though. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I guess that's.
God, don't encourage him.
Yeah, all right. We gotta. He'll talk about Batman for the next hour.
I'm not saying anything more.
So let me get back to Trek with the only question on my mind and everybody's mind. So in the beginning, when Michael's talking about, they're like, we got to see Spock. Michael's like, I can't see Spock. Like I can't be involved in seeing Spock. I can't insert myself into the situation. Now, insertion, Spock.
You're back on the, did they...
I'm just saying, we don't know whether or not Spock and Michael fucked yet.
Listen, my wife, when we watched the premiere episode, agreed with you, and we talked about Royal Tenenbaums, and we said that, we said that when Spock gets out of the shuttlecraft, they should play the Nico song from Royal Tenenbaums. And it should be that. They should be like the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah.
But Sonequa Martin Green went on a thing 2 weeks ago and said that it's not real.
That's a bummer. It's a shame.
I saw that too, and they're like, well, it's probably not real, but you remember they said the same thing about We Did Not Bury Our Gays with Wilson Cruz, and they did.
See?
So...
Well,
it's probably. I'm sure they probably didn't.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I need to be clear. I think it is clear that this is like a very fun joke. I don't think it happens.
I don't know. There's still a chance.
Here's the thing, though, is I almost wish that was what's going to happen. Not only because I love the Royal Tenenbaums, and then you could have Spock. It could be exactly like the Royal Tenenbaums. He could have gone crazy like Luke Wilson. And they could use the Elliott Smith song, like more pop music.
Oh, he's got the beard and everything.
Yeah,
he's going to play Needle in the Hay while he's
that's true. Yeah, you could do the exact same scene.
It's going to be the goodbye to the old Spock.
Yeah.
Welcome to the new Spock, which is the old Spock that we know, and he's shaving in the mirror. And
you have most people assume that Spock went crazy, but this preassumes that maybe he was sane. Maybe
he didn't.
Yeah, maybe he didn't. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I kind of wish that there was something real that was actually like shocking, like that, like them having had like a romantic relationship, because it would be more interesting dramatically. So right now, if that really is off the table, then it's like your options are, what did she do? Cheat on a test or something? You know what I mean?
Right. He went to talk to her about his problems and she told him to go away. Like, what are we?
Yeah.
There's so much buildup for it that I don't think it's not incest. It probably shouldn't be incest. I get it. But there's been so much buildup for it that, like, if it's not something on the shocking level of incest, it's gonna land with a thud, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. That like, because she has been so cryptic about what it was she did to wrong him, and yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'm kind of reserving my judgment for whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
Like when they reveal it.
It's too bad too, because in the first season they did a really good job with inserting that was for you.
Thank you.
They did a good job of putting her into Spock's biography by pointing out that she was part of why Sarek and Spock didn't talk.
Right.
So like Sarek sticks up for Michael Burnham and to be part of this Vulcan space voyage that's like really great or something. It's like the Vulcan MFA program that everybody wants to get into. And then they reject her. They don't reject her. They say he has to choose between her and Spock in season 1. Great episode. It's the Lethe episode where she's mind melding with him the whole time. Actually, probably my favorite episode of the first season. I don't know if you would agree with me. Yeah. Felt like a very good episode. I like any episode that's like a mind meld takes place in someone's mind. But then it turns out that he chose Spock, obviously, because it's his biological son. But then Spock, of course, rejected him, which means that Sarek's mad because he had to lie to his adopted daughter for nothing. That was a brilliant way of slipping Michael Burnham into the canon of Star Trek and saying it actually explains why Sarek and Spock don't talk and why Sarek is so irrationally angry with Spock. Because Spock unknowingly caused him to dash the dreams of Michael Burnham. Obviously, it's way cooler that she got to be in Starfleet than go to like the lame Vulcan MFA program, but whatever. This season, it's like, now here we are again with Michael Burnham, Star Trek canon stuff. And how are we going to explain why they don't talk? The thing is that the flaw of this is that we don't need to know why they don't talk.
Yeah,
right.
That's my thing. You don't have to explain everything. Just have it.
We actually never needed to know.
Yeah.
There was a novel that came out right before Discovery aired in which, this will blow your minds, Wade, I don't know if you're aware of this. There's an official Star Trek Discovery tie-in novel that came out 2 weeks before Star Trek Discovery aired called Desperate Hours that takes place on the Shenzhou with Michael Burnham and Saru and Captain Georgiou. And guess who they meet?
Spock.
Captain Pike and Spock.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, was that a David Mack book?
David Mack book. Yeah, I know David. Yeah. I talked to him about it before the book. Yes. So like in that book, like Burnham and Spock reconcile.
That's
so funny.
And it's like fine, and like the reasons for them like not really talking are just kind of like just like whatever, because our dad was a dick, like that's the reason, and so the aspects of that book you could sort of like be like, oh, they actually can walk it back, and because Burnham doesn't say how many years it's been since she hasn't talked to Spock, she just says years. You know what I mean? And so so it's like, who knows, but like. I just don't think we ever needed to know why they didn't speak.
Yeah.
Sarek is I'm like pretty hardcore on old Star Trek books, and there's a really great one called The Vulcan Science Academy Murders that you guys should all read. It's like Spock and Kirk solving, mostly Kirk and Sarek, actually, Spock's dad, solving a murder mystery on the planet Vulcan.
Well, that sounds like a Patreon episode if I've heard one.
But it's like the Star Trek novelists in the 80s, like, were just allowed to do whatever they want, and they were mostly all these all these like really like clever women who like make like doing retcon in these novels, like explaining why, like, so there's all this shit that like I'm convinced the Discovery staff has read this book. I'm convinced of it.
Oh yeah.
But like I was just like reading this, and I'm just like, the book really does lay it on thick that I'm like, yeah, Sarek was just a bad father. He was just a bad father.
Right.
He was just like, his ego was so big that he thought he could like solve all these problems between humans and Vulcans and stuff like that. And Discovery has touched on this a little bit. So I don't think that we need to blame Michael Burnham for her relationship with her brother.
Right.
I think we just blame the dad. That's what Star Trek's done before. We've been blaming Sarek for Spock's problems for 50 years. It's been fine. I don't think we need to blame Michael Burnham. So I'm kind of disappointed that is, to you guys' point, is that it's such a buildup that the only way it can resolve itself is for the audience to go, well, that's not your fault.
Right.
Is for the audience to side with her and say, actually, that's not your fault. That's Sarek's fault. Or that's, God forbid they bring in Spock's other sibling.
You're right.
Sybok. You guys know who Sybok is?
Wade's told us, yeah. That sounds, boy.
Did you know that Sybok was supposed to be played by Sean Connery?
What?
Oh, I did not know that.
Star Trek Final Frontier, directed and written by William Shatner, the greatest Star Trek director and writer of all time.
Yeah.
He wants to make love to the mountain. Google it.
Well, what does God need with a starship is one of the greatest Star Trek lines ever.
Yeah, I have heard that line.
Does God?
Excuse me, but so Shatner is co-writing Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, and he wants a really big name actor to play Spock's secret brother, Sybok. And he wants Connery. And they're going to get Connery, but you all know the famous 1989 movie that Connery did instead.
Is this Highlander?
No, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh.
So Sean Connery chose being Indiana Jones' father over being Spock's brother. Correctly.
Oh. I think that's probably the right choice.
I was about to say, in retrospect,
correctly.
Because if you had said Highlander, I would have been like, I mean, I love Highlander, make no mistake, but like if he had, career-wise, I don't know.
Well, you can't imagine the guy who played Spock's brother in Highlander. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Okay.
Listen, I'd give anything to hear Sean Connery say Spock that many times.
That's my point. So anyway, the name of the planet they go to in Star Trek V is called Shaka-Ree, which is supposed to be a reference to Sean Connery.
Oh.
That's so funny. Oh my God.
Supposedly.
Wait, what? So was this the original name of the planet, or did they change it when they knew he wasn't going to play the part? Because
it's in like 3 Star Trek history books, so that is a question that no one has asked. The next time I interview William Shatner, which will be never, because he blocked me on Twitter.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That doesn't seim hard to do, though.
No, it wasn't hard.
Get blocked by Shatner.
I love Captain Kirk, but I do not love William Shatner. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I don't know. I don't know.
Talk about well, this is a leap, but names sounding like things that are related. No, the mushroom that possesses Tilly is called the JAHSep, is the name of their people.
Is that really what it was?
I had to turn on the subtitles to do it.
Yeah.
And so the Jah are the people, and she speaks with like a Jamaican or Caribbean accent. Felt a little bit like, wait, was that intentional or just a mistake?
Oh boy.
That feels like maybe it was subconsciously unfortunate.
I don't know. Yeah,
it's like a George Lucas Phantom Menace problem.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Like,
totally.
Like I don't think that George Lucas is racist, but he was on accident type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just the movie comes out, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I don't know.
I made a mistake.
I wondered if we were supposed to recognize that race. Actually.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't something that I was really thinking about. It sounded like a Deep Space Nine alien race to me, honestly.
Yeah, it didn't sound familiar, but I'm keeping my ears open for JAHSep.
I will say I did like the "There is no Dana, only Zool" scene with Tilly. That was cool. We should also talk about how fucking wild it is. How quickly they decide, you know what? We're gonna drill a hole in her head with this. Like,
I love that. Talk about lo-fi solutions.
Yeah,
that's Tig, baby.
Just singing the song and bringing it up by her head was like, okay, that's.
Yeah, I mean, to be the guy again who like talks about old Star Trek is, I thought that was just them like bringing it home to like, because the whole episode is like Star Trek 4, right? Like Star Trek 4, like this giant cylindrical probe rolls up on Earth and sends signals that are seemingly to be destructive. Then Spock's like, maybe it's just trying to communicate, right? Yeah. So then this episode's the same thing. A giant spear shows up, and then they're like, oh, maybe. But in Star Trek 4, they have to save.
Is that the one with the whales?
It's the best Star Trek movie of all time.
All right.
So yes.
I honestly think that one of the reasons why this episode is so good is that because it uses a great theme
that's
for Star
funny.
Trek, which is that giant alien thing is actually just trying to talk to you. And in Star Trek 4, the dialogue is much better than it is in an episode of Discovery, only because it's just fresher then,
Or they got Nicholas Meyer
Nicholas Meyer wrote most of the dialogue for that film, Bones, you think this is the way of it saying hi there to the people of the Earth, But, in Star Trek 4, they have to save Chekhov from a contemporary hospital.
Oh, right.
And Bones says, drilling holes in his head isn't the answer, So I thought that insofar as Tig Notaro is the new Bones.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I can kind of see that.
Yeah. And something I learned, there's also a chief engineer that we still don't know.
That's my Scotty theory.
Oh.
That's my Scotty theory, is that Scotty cannot have been the chief engineer of Discovery in season 1 because they went to the Mirror Universe. And Scotty knows what the Mirror Universe, would have known what the Mirror Universe was in the original series. But they could have picked up a whole bunch of new motherfuckers on Earth at the end of season 1. And they clearly did, because there's new characters walking around. That alien guy with the cold.
Linus.
Yeah.
So they clearly picked up a bunch of new crew members. We've never seen the engineering section of Discovery. We don't know who the chief engineer is. They're not named.
Right. It took all season to get Dr. Pollard as the chief engineer, or chief medical officer.
They reference outright Scotty in the beginning of this episode when Pike says, "Do you ever think the Enterprise will have another chief engineer more in love with the ship?"
Yeah,
we know the answer is yes, because it's going to be Scotty. So why can't Scotty just be the interim chief engineer of the Discovery? And then in this season, he comes out and he says Scottish things and it's funny, and then he gets transferred to the Enterprise at the end of the season. They'll totally do it.
I wouldn't put it past them.
They would totally do it. Lorca knew who Scotty was in season 1.
Oh, right.
He did an impression of Scotty. And that was fucking Mirror Lorca, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, he spent 2 years in the Federation and didn't learn anything. So that was
I think that the idea, it felt weird to have a reference to Scotty and for Tig Notaro to say the chief engineer made me do this. When we know that Tig Notaro is just going to become the chief engineer of Discovery.
Right.
Yeah.
Come on. Like, she's just going to... So how do you do that? You either kill the existing chief engineer, a la Star Trek Voyager, killing off half their fake crew in the first episode, or you have it be a famous Star Trek character that needs to get transferred to the Enterprise.
Man, I like that theory. That's a dope theory.
Yeah. I like that. That to me is better than Spock just overtaking everything without actually being on screen. I'm okay with quick blink and you miss it cameos or single episode cameos where it's like, okay, great, we're just gonna have a little fun with this like character we know and love, as opposed to every single like major event has to revolve around the dangling carrot of Spock.
The question is, who should play Scotty if Scotty is secretly on Star Trek Discovery?
Well, Sean Connery.
Well, of course. a CGI Sean Connery.
Yeah, we'll de-age him. They can do that.
He's still around. He could do it.
He retired after the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Glenn. He's not coming.
No,
he's not coming out of retirement for Discovery.
Like, listen, what role he was born to play? Scotty.
A 90-year-old Scotty.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 90-year-old Scotty.
Boy, I mean, I'd love that.
Yeah. Don't explain why. Just have Scotty inexplicably be 90 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can get Simon Pegg to jump on, right? They can't.
No,
that feels unrealistic.
I feel like that it should be like one of these like Doctor Who actors. It should be like one of these guys. Like it should be like David Tennant or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. That'd be fun.
Right.
I'm trying to think of someone who's like a similar like who's like a TV level Simon Pegg type.
Right, that could do a Scottish accent. It's tricky.
Yeah.
What Canadians do we know that can do a good Scottish accent?
Right.
They could also just do it. The other thing is they could also do it without us ever seeing him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could also do it that way. They could just be like, "Oh, Mr. Scott's been transferred." You know what I mean? They could do it that way.
Right,
sure.
they could.
Which I could see them doing very easily. But in the original series, it is kind of like implied that Scotty's been around for a bit,
right?
And like there is like he kind of does like seemingly kind of not really like in the Where No Man Has Gone Before. It seems like he doesn't really like Kirk. Wait, is Scotty in Where No Man Has Gone Before? Yes, he is. There's a lot of characters that get rotated around, guys, in the original series. It's really weird.
Yeah,
sure.
The original series is fucked up. You should watch all of it. It's great.
Yeah, well, maybe they can start doing that with Discovery, I guess.
Well,
have you guys seen the Menagerie?
I have.
Or have you seen The Cage or the Menagerie, which introduces Captain Pike?
No.
You guys should just...
Yeah. I know that is that the episode where Pike's like the vegetable in the wheelchair with the beeps?
Well, that's the Menagerie, right?
Yeah, yes, but the Menagerie also gives you pretty much the entirety of The Cage as a flashback.
Yeah.
So the Menagerie is great. And I rewatched it recently, and I was like shocked by how much Discovery was riffing off of this like Spock stealing a shuttle thing. Because it's like pretty much the flip of it. It's like Spock steals the Enterprise in a Menagerie, to save Captain Pike. And then Kirk takes a shuttlecraft to try to catch him.
Right.
So the Menagerie is great, and I would recommend watching it. And I think that it's really interesting that they are trying to, I don't know fucking how they're going to do it, but how they're going to try to lead us to that.
Yeah. I guess we should start wrapping it up here.
Oh, sorry.
Never.
But one other fan theory, going back to The Brightest Star, that the Baul that they never show in that short trek are actually just Kelpians. That Kelpians are like axolotl, like salamanders.
Oh, so it's like the time machine where there's like the Morlock. They're like the Morlocks.
Oh, okay.
Is that
like
it could even just be like a simple class thing that like they're just like they're the wealthy elite of Kelpian society and they just hide themselves.
And the head testicles, ganglia. I mean, with those, he looks kind of like an axolotl salamander. Like that are famous for. They have a whole different life stage that most of them never get to.
Wow, that's great.
And
I think we have different definitions of famous, but
well, if you're certain kind of nerd.
No, that's wait. No, explain that a little bit more.
There's salamander axolotl salamanders. They live like their whole lives like in a larval state, and then some scientists in like 18 or 1900s realized that like evolutionary they've stayed in the larval stage, but they will actually move on to like an amphibian,
they've been stunted, and then you're saying that Saru is like that. Like he's like his people have been intentionally kept.
Right. And you never see the Baul, which was a problem I had with the Brightest Star short trek. Like I wanted to see them, if they're a prey species, I want them to be prey species instead of just cattle, which I guess they domesticated them, that's fine. But like I wanted to see them running from the Baul and stuff. But if the Baul are just like you hit that stage and they take them away before their ganglia fall off, and then they lose all their fear, and then that's like the Baul.
I'm going to say that, Wade, if that theory isn't right, then whatever they end up doing will be inferior to that theory.
I like that a ton.
I like that. That's an interesting.
I mean, I wish I came up with it, but some nerds on the internet
it's
said
really
that.
Good. It's really dramatic, and it really puts a nice spin. Because Giorgio says there's a lot of complicated reasons why you can't see your people again, which implies that she might know. Because if it's the Prime Directive, it would mean that that's part of their culture. Because if the Baul are an alien species, then it feels like Giorgio shouldn't have gave a shit. And just like sort of like said, hey, let's, Kirk style, let's just, your whole planet's a lie. Like she could have like just rolled in and just been like, we're going to,
So they've clearly set up that like Saru's different now, because when he's not afraid of everything, he's like, he goes a little bit crazy. We learned in that one Kirsten Beyer episode
last season.
So he's kind of there, and he's obviously going to want to go home. He said as much, to do what he knows for his people, since he's the great balance just turned out to be a lie for him.
Well, that would be really awesome, because then I was like, God, do we have to go back to Kaminar and see like some lame, generic, like Star Trek Discovery alien species that's enslaved the Kelpians? That like, But if it's the Kelpians, then that's great.
So yeah,
that's great. I hope that's true.
I bet
that's true.
Do you think he's gonna go out and like buy a Corvette now? Do you think like this is his midlife crisis?
Yeah,
he doesn't. He has no fear anymore, so he's gonna show up next episode with like a 23-year-old bottle blonde with big fake tits.
What would be cool? What would be cool is if he wanted the Klingons to help him take out the Baul. That would be cool.
Oh.
Because here's how they could write out Doug Jones from this season, is that it could be a revenge thing. He could find out that, this is awesome, he could find out that it's Kelpians. He could find out that Starfleet knew and kept it from him. He could resign. He could steal spaceships and weapons, and then he could team up with the Klingons to take them out. And then that could piss the Starfleet off, because then that could make the tensions with the Klingons rise again. Because like maybe the Baul, maybe the Kelpia, or what's it called, Kaminar? Maybe that's like on some weird boundary.
Oh yeah.
And then they're like, oh damn, Saru just made things a problem again for us with the Klingons. That's how they'll do it. He'll be like Rambo or something. What's a good revenge? I'm trying to think. Like he's like
John Wick. He's gonna John Wick.
He's John Wick. Yeah.
They killed my dog, my people.
I would be so on board for a Star Trek themed John Wick,
where it's just Doug Jones, lanky, going around putting headshots on.
Take all of my money, please.
It kind of works. Like, and then he knows Section 31. He's been in the Mirror Universe. Like, he's seen what goes down. Yeah, it's cool.
All right, so we'll see if that is where they go with it. I think maybe it's a good time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Ryan, I totally forgot to plug your book at the opening. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's an old book.
Yeah, everybody should go buy it, though.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker Can't Read came out in 2015. More theories of mine where I connect random lines spoken in science fiction properties and extrapolate them. So if you liked my idea about Pike being more like Marie Kondo, my book's full of a bunch of stuff like that, and predates the insane Star Wars fan backlash of 2017.
Oh, right.
A simpler time in a fandom.
It was, yeah. There's a bunch of stuff about Star Trek in there, and about how Kirk and Spock love reading Dickens, and
that's so funny.
That's awesome. Hey, Wade, have you talked about really quick about how Michael Burnham reading Lewis Carroll comes from Star Trek the Animated Series?
No, I have not.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Oh, because Amanda is big on it in the animated
Star Trek
series.
The Animated Series, they go back to the planet with the White Rabbit. Which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen the Star Trek episode with the White Rabbit, Shore Leave, you should just watch it.
All right.
It's basically like Westworld, only it's whatever you imagine, including White Rabbit. Meaning that if you think that Captain Kirk didn't have sex with a White Rabbit on the Shore Leave planet, I think you're wrong. I think that he did. Anyway, and they go back to the White Rabbit fantasy robot planet in the animated series, and Spock starts like correcting people on like shit that happens in Alice in Wonderland versus Alice Through the Looking Glass. And he's like, Dr. McCoy, that's Alice Through the Looking Glass. And Kirk's like, how do you know, Spock? And he's like, my mother was very fond of the works of Lewis Carroll.
Well, there you go.
Now we know that she read Alice in Wonderland to Spock and
There you
Michael
go.
Burnham as Bet. So Michael Burnham is referenced retroactively in Star Trek the Animated Series.
Good.
Interesting.
The connections run deep.
Because I got a little bit tired of all the Looking Glass references, but I mean, I guess good on them for at least that pulling it from
There's
somewhere.
a couple other there's a bunch of animated series stuff in the first season of Discovery, but I can't remember what it is. There's a lot of Deep Space Nine too, though.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we could go on.
Yeah. The Zenkethi or kind of whatever. That's the whole thing.
Nerds.
And the shooting range that Lorca
With Tyler.
Yeah, because it predates the
holodeck
or whatever.
Yeah, that's in the animated series. Yeah, but no, when Saru looks up the famous captains in season 1.
Oh yeah.
One of the captains is Captain April, who is the captain of the Enterprise before Pike, and his name was also on that thing that Pike's report card.
Oh right. Yeah.
Or whatever in episode 1. Captain April. So maybe Captain April will show up and he'll be played by Sean Connery also.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. So that's a good place to wrap it up. Go check out Ryan C. Britt on Twitter. That's your Twitter handle, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and check out all his Star Trek articles and buy his book. Do all this stuff. Sean, you don't have anything to plug, do you?
No, I think I'm gonna have a late lunch of a Greek food, a hero pita. So I don't know, I'll let you know how that is next week.
All right.
And Greek food, plug Greek food. It's great.
Greek food's great.
Oh man, Little Greek is the place near me. I think it's like a small chain, but like it might be around.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. Check out Little Greek.
All right. And Glenn, you have that QE D&D show with Glenn and Wade I hear about. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm hoping you hear about it from time to time. D&D show played live on stage. Follow us on Twitter at QEDND. Also on Instagram.
Yeah. John Wick reference. We'll have that in the next show.
Our next show is a John Wick campaign featuring Christian Finnegan. So very excited for that.
Nice.
Very cool.
But all right. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Does anybody have any way they want to close it out?
Can you play the Nico song when you mix this?
Yes, I can.
Or the Elliott Smith Needle Hay.
Needle on the hay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's my request.
Okay. I'll see what I can do. All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye guys.
Liz!